Clay lets you do in 10 minutes what used to take an SDR team dozens of hours. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly what Clay actually is, what the three main use cases are, and how we've used it to generate multi-seven figures in pipeline on behalf of our clients. So what actually is Clay? Clay is a workflow automation tool that sits between your data sources and your action tools, right? So it's like the central hub of your GTM operations. So the flow is that data comes in from, Apollo, LinkedIn, from Clay itself, from your CRM, from form fill-outs, whatever the entry point is. Clay then enriches it to add more information, cleans it, and acts on it. And then you get clean data going out back to your CRM or to your email sequencer or to your sales team, right? So the three main use cases are, number one, outbound prospecting. So that's finding prospects, enriching with research, personalizing at scale, and then pushing to your sequencer or to your sales team. You have inbound lead management. So that's centralizing your form fills, your webinar signups, your ad leads, all of that kind of stuff, qualifying and routing them automatically to the right place. And then you have RevOps, right? So that's importing messy CRM data, which is a huge issue for a lot of companies, deduping that, enriching that, normalizing it, and then sending it back clean to your CRM. Now, the main use case I'm going to focus on is outbound prospecting because that's the main thing that we do. So in terms of my outbound workflow in Clay, the old problem was that you had two options, right? You could either hire SDRs to do personalized outreach, or you could send mass email blasts that get ignored. Clay breaks that dichotomy. So you can personalize one-to-one and you can do that at massive scale. So here's my exact process, right? I find prospects. So we generally pull from Apollo, but you can also pull from Sales Navigator, from within Clay itself. We then enrich automatically to find things like company news, tech stack, recent funding, LinkedIn activity. From there, we use AI research. So Claygen essentially allows you to find any piece of publicly available information or data on the internet, right? And so using that, we can then generate personalized first lines, but also personalization within the email itself, right? Personalized custom fields. And the other thing that it allows you to do is to score prospects based on fit and score accounts based on fit. So that means you're much more likely to reach out to people who are a good fit and leave those who aren't a good fit behind. And then from there, we push to smart leads. So you can also push obviously to, instantly the growth machine, whatever it is that you use, but we push directly from Clay to smart lead. So what used to require an SDR spending 15 minutes per prospect now can happen automatically at scale. So to really quickly walk through an example workflow, this is an example from one client. And essentially what they do is work with, companies that have either recently been through a merger or an acquisition or a spin-off, or have recently had a funding round, right? And they had a valuable resource that they wanted to send to these companies. So essentially what we did was set up a RSS feed within Clay. And essentially what this is doing is telling us anytime, one of those keywords is mentioned. So acquisition, merger, spin-off, funding round, etc. What we're then doing is finding the publication outlet and the link to that. We're then scoring the title based on whether or not this is actually likely to be one of those events that we're looking for. We're then figuring out, are they in the US or not, right? What we're then doing is finding out what type of deal it was. And based on the type of deal, we're finding out who was involved and exactly what the names of those companies were, if multiple. From there, we then split that out. We find the domains of those companies and then their LinkedIns. And using that, we then search for people at those companies. So that's in a separate table, right? And so then if we go into this table, we've then found those people at those companies, but we can also search back to that company table that I was just talking about. So what you'll see here is then we have first name, last name, job title of all of those people. We score them to see, are they actually a decision maker? We then use something called a waterfall, which combines a load of different providers. So that allows us to get really great coverage to find those people's emails, right? And then we, split that out into the type of deal. We create a first line based on the deal that we found. And then we create a subject line based on that as well, right? And then we push all of this directly to smart leads. So what you'll see if we come into here, William just caught a Vauxhall Masters article about your Series B round. And then, we're then pitching the resource, the lead magnet that we want to give them. But again, you'll see that if I go back here, we're talking about the specific deal type. Obviously the first line is unique, etc. And so this is fully automated, right? As soon as something is mentioned in the news about a funding round, a merger, an acquisition, a spin-off, this runs automatically and sends this lead magnet out to those people, right? And so you can see how this just saves so much time, because manually you can go through and do this, or you can just set it up once and have it fully automated thereafter. So in terms of how Clay actually works, you have data sources, you have enrichments, you then have Clayagent, which I mentioned, which allows you to find any kind of publicly available information on the net. You also have formulas and AI, and you have exports, right? I'll walk through these in more detail in another video, but this is just to give you a quick overview. But the problems that this solves are tech stacks that don't talk to each other, which is a very common issue, especially in bigger companies, manual prospecting that doesn't scale with headcount, generic outreach that typically gets ignored, right? And RevOps teams that are buried in data work. Clay consolidates all of those workflows, automates the manual research, and makes personalization at scale actually possible. So it's free to start, build your first table. You can use the link in the description to get 3,000 free credits, test out the enrichment, see if it works for your workflow. If you want to see how we've used it to generate multi-seven figures in pipeline, I'll break that exact workflow down in the next video. If you want us to build your Clay workflows and handle your entire outbound system, we've got replies from companies like Disney, Fortune.com, Fashion Nova, the BBC, etc., etc. If that's something you're interested in learning more about, book a strategy call via the link below. Thanks.